It's time to hear from some experts in the startup space who are going to impart some very valuable knowledge that could be used by any business around the world.
And these are experts indeed, Clay. We are going to hear from the Canva founders, Melanie, our CEO, Cliff, our COO, and Cameron, our CPO, as well as some of our amazing investors, Rick Baker from Blackbird and Wesley Chan from Felicis. They're going to take us through the art of the pitch, as well as some of the many lessons that they learned while building Canva.
And then we're going to finish the day off with Cameron, who will take us through building a strong brand and then achieving your goals from doing that.
So everyone, get your workbooks ready and put your virtual hands together to welcome Melanie. Off to you, Melanie.
Thank you so much, Clayton and Julie. It is so exciting to be here with you all today. Thank you so much for coming. We are really excited to be with you, and we hope that you find something that's really helpful for your own journey, whatever that may be. So a quick question, just so we can get a feel for the room. What do you use Canva for currently? We'd love you to put your answer in the chat, and we're going to have a good read through all of them afterwards. Teaching, presentations, job interviews. Oh my gosh, so many amazing answers coming through. So this first session is all about the art of the pitch, which is very applicable in a lot of different environments. So we hope you find something useful for you all today, because many people from many different professions need to create pitch decks. It's certainly not limited to startups alone, though it is certainly very helpful for startups indeed. There's many reasons that people need to be creating pitch decks. At their essence, pitch decks are about taking an idea and communicating it in a way that other people like and understand. We've had so many pitch decks over the years. It's had many shapes and many flavors, and we've certainly had many variations and iterations, ensuring that people understand what Canva is and what it is that we have set out to do. We've baked vision decks, in fact, into the product process itself at Canva. The very first step of the product process when we're launching any new products is actually to create a vision deck. And then we move on to defining your goals and milestones and building the product and refining it and then launching it to the world. But that first step of creating a vision deck is extraordinarily important. So we've called this session the art of the pitch because creating a pitch deck is a little more art than science, though we will try to explain a couple of the actually standard things that you can make sure you're adding to your pitch deck to make sure it's really understandable today. So in this session, we're going to be having 4 segments. I'm going to explain a little bit about our very long pitch journey. We're going to have 5 lessons from the 100 plus, in fact, probably more like hundreds, if not thousands of pitch decks that we've created over the years. We have a special surprise in store for you, which I'm really excited to share. And then we are going to be diving into some Q&A with some of our earliest investors. Firstly, our long pitch journey. It started many, many, many years ago when I was at university and I was teaching design programs, and they were so complicated and hard. It would take a whole semester for people just to learn where the buttons were, let alone how to design something that actually looked good. But the problem was, it wasn't just the design programs that were really challenging. They were really fragmented and only accessible to professionals that have to go and find a design template and then source fonts, then source stock photography, and then use a different design program for everything under the sun, and then edit and animate and illustrate the designs using different programs again, and then publishing and printing their designs and managing and storing their content in all these different products. And it was really, really, really confusing and complicated and way too much for most people to navigate. But the reality was, in days gone by, it didn't really matter that much, as communication was predominantly word-based. Newspapers were word-based, sales pitches were word-based, everything was essentially very much word-based. But as you all are probably very well aware, visual communication has now become the status quo, and it's really important that everyone can design. So our goal was to take the entire design ecosystem, integrate it into one simple page, and make it accessible to the whole world, which was a rather large feat. We wanted it to be available to every profession under the sun. But the reality was, at this point in time, back in 2007, I was a university student and Cliff was as well. So my boyfriend became my co-founder, and we took over my mom's living room and set to work on not trying to tackle the entire world of design, for tackling school yearbooks in Australia. So we wanted to make it really simple for people to design their school yearbook online and collaboratively. But then a couple of years later, that was going pretty well. And I met an investor who was over from San Francisco. And he said if I went over there all the way from Perth, he would be happy to meet with me. And so I jumped on a plane and I took him my paper pitch deck, which I had no idea was so uncool, that apparently everyone had it on iPads and iPhones and their laptops. But I brought my paper pitch deck that I'd printed on my printing press in my mom's living room and presented the future of publishing. And then 1 year later, we met Cam, who joined as our co-founder. And we were getting so much rejection. So people were saying, unfortunately, I don't think the time is quite right. I'm not going to do an investment in Australia. So many different reasons under the sun as to why people didn't want to invest in Canva. But eventually, after all of those rejections, we were able to raise funds and we were able to put together some incredible investors to actually back this crazy journey. And then in 2013, we were very excited because we were able to get the team together. And this was actually us with our very first team outside our very first office for Canva. After a year of development, so you can see a number of years have passed before we finally got to this point, we were able to launch Canva to the world. It was born in 2013 to power all visual communication needs, to democratize design and make it accessible to all. And so as you all hopefully know, because hopefully you're already using Canva, it's a really simple to use drag and drop platform. And it was pretty darn cool after all of those years to start to see this crazy big vision actually turning into reality and being used by so many people across the globe. And the whole concept of having everything you need to design was all in there. So you could just drag and drop, our hundreds of thousands of templates and our millions of images directly into your product. And after a number of years of development, we now have simultaneous collaboration. So you can be collaborating with your classmates, with your teammates, and so you can all be editing the same design at the same time. And of course, we are completely cross-platform, so you can use Canva on web, on desktop, on laptops, on mobiles, wherever you want to use Canva, Canva is there for you. So that was many, many years in the making. And now I finally feel like after all of those many years and the 2,200 people in our team's very hard efforts, we now have actually brought that dream to life, which is extraordinarily exciting. And now it's available to everyone in the world. So this is a 1-minute video that captures that crazy big vision and puts it into 1 minute. So here it is right now. So I love that video, firstly, because an amazing team that created it. But secondly, because it really is a dream come true seeing Canva being used by so many people and that crazy wild vision that we had actually turned into reality and being able to be used by millions of people across the world. So we now have 65 million people using Canva each month. And we are so incredibly grateful to each and every one of them. Otherwise, we certainly wouldn't be here today. And we're really excited about what we can unlock for you all over the years to come. So I guess that was 10 years of my life in a nutshell. And what we're going to be doing right now is diving into 5 lessons from the hundreds, if not thousands of pitches that we have done over the years. So hopefully you can apply it to your own pitches, whatever they may be. So the first tip that I have for you today is that pitch decks should tell a story. And I remember when I got this tip years ago when we were trying to create our first deck, and I was just trying to say everything in a very short period of time. And I didn't realize that you had to have the narrative arc the same as you would a storybook. The next tip that I have for you is that every time you get a tricky question, that is a great opportunity to refine your pitch deck. And I'll give you a couple of examples of what I mean. So we had a lot of people saying, I don't understand your industry, which kind of made sense. They were venture capitalists and not necessarily professional designers. And in the early days of our pitch deck, we didn't actually explain it because it kind of seemed obvious to us. But what was really important was to actually communicate the complications of designing, the complications of the whole design process, so people could understand it, even if they hadn't had that personal experience with it. Another question that we got a lot was, your market isn't big enough. People thought it was a completely an oxymoron that you would have a design tool that was for both non-designers and designers, because firstly, it seemed like the market was already baked. And secondly, why would you ever want a tool for non-designers to design? It seemed like an oxymoron. So what we had to do was to explain how big the industry was and put a few large numbered dollar signs that kind of made investors a lot more excited than before we had that slide. Another question that we got a lot of, or rejected for, was that you are the same as some other company, and people would continuously tell us that we're the same as some other company out there. And so what we did again was we put this slide in and we showed the gap in the market where there wasn't products that were offering complete creative freedom and a low budget in terms of time and money. And that was exactly what we wanted to offer to the world. And then every time they would throw a new idea of another company that we were the same as supposedly, we would then add it to the slide to help refute their questions. The next aspect is the problem is really important to understand and to really believe in before you dive into the solution. So in our early pitch decks, the first slide was like, hey, this is our solution. This is what we want to do. It's going to be amazing. But if they didn't understand the problem, they didn't understand the magnitude of the problem, they didn't understand how many people cared about the problem, they really, really didn't care about our solution. So if they don't care about the problem you're solving, they won't care about your solution. So our first deck dived way too quickly into that solution. And then we refined our pitch deck over and over again. And then we really dived into the problem. We helped our investors or potential investors to understand the problem in a much more detail before we dived into the solution. This is a tip that I use all the time myself. And I also use it when I'm helping people with their pitch decks. If lost in your pitch deck and you have 100 pages and you don't know really where to go back to 10 to 20 dot points, really pull out exactly what it is that you're wanting to say, and really getting back to the basics and making sure that you've got the narrative in there and that you're really communicating only what you want to say can be a really helpful place to just get back to make sure you're saying all of the right things. I know it's a really simple advice, is getting back to dot points, but I think that it could be very, very valuable, and it certainly saved me and a number of other people a bunch of times. And then once you have those dot points, it can be a really important idea to be able to back up each of those proof points with a visual. So for example, let me show you a few. So it might be a chart. So rather than just saying, oh, we're growing really quickly, having a chart that actually shows that growth obviously helps to facilitate people to believe that. Doubling down on testimonials is also really important. Bringing out visuals, actually showing your product is really important as well. And then of course, showing off some key stats. In our early days, of course, we didn't have many key stats. We just had a big vision, but now, of course, we've been adding in a lot of stats and pointy graphs that investors really like. So anything else that helps to substantiate your claims is really, really important. So a very quick recap of this section. It's really important to get the problem down pat before we dive into the solution. It's really important to tell a story. If lost, go back to dot points, use tricky questions to refine your deck, and make sure that you have 1 point per slide with visual proof to back up that point. So hopefully, regardless of what pitch deck you're creating, hopefully those points can come in handy for you. So we hope you can apply these to your own pitch decks as well. I have one question for you. So what the Canva Create team might not tell you is that we have actually created this conference in just the last couple of weeks. It's been a magnificent effort from everyone who has put this conference together. But what I'd love to know is, what would you like to see in Canva in the future, or learn at our next Canva Create conference? So if you put it in the chat, I'm going to go through and read every single one of them. So pop it in and I'm going to have a field day of many hours spent, hopefully, if you've got a few ideas, reading through that. Thank you very, very much. So many great things. Lots more video editing, custom domains I saw come through. Okay, excellent. So I did promise a special surprise, and I am very excited to say that I have a special guest from the Canva team to share this special surprise with you today. She has, in fact, been leading a secrets project for more than a year at Canva. She's going to not only share the product pitch, and she's going to do a fantastic job of demonstrating the problem and solution, which is an excellent formula. She's also going to be sharing a brand new product with you all here today. So you're going to be seeing something world first in just a moment. So I'm very pleased to welcome Mamancha to the stage right now. Over to you, Mamancha.
Thanks for the intro, Mel, and hi, everyone. Like Mel said, I'm here for a very special announcement. As you know, PDFs are one of the most widely used formats in the world. We use them to send invites, resumes, presentations, lesson plans, assignments, and a lot more. In fact, over 2.5 trillion PDFs exist in the world right now, and more are being created as we speak. In 2017 alone, 90% of the static files on the internet were PDFs. But PDFs were designed in the 90s when we would print out our documents on paper. They don't work well on mobile. They're small and difficult to make changes with, and they aren't really interactive and don't support live updates. And they're so hard to share. There are multiple steps. You need to download them and then share them. It's just painful. But most of all, they don't really take advantage of the technology that we have today. We did promise you a very special announcement, and I'm excited to introduce to you Canva sites. So you can pre-register Canva sites if you're launching in beta at the end of this session. We'll be investing a lot in this area over the coming years, but we are very, very excited to present to you the first version of it in beta. With Canva sites, you'll be able to turn your PDF resumes into portfolio sites so that let you show everyone your amazing skills and experience to land your dream job. And your printed invites can also become a website that can be shared with the URL to easily get RSVPs. Your internal comms can become responsive online magazines, and your handwritten lesson plans can become interactive online classrooms with links to activities, homeworks, and more. And keeping it updated is super simple. You can bring the power of the internet to your Canva site by adding videos directly from YouTube, like tutorials and TED Talks, or even add your favorite music from SoundCloud or Spotify. You can add content directly from your social media and also add clickable links to them. We want to empower everyone in the world to design simple and gorgeous one-page sites. You can simply start by searching hundreds of templates or create one from scratch. You can make it your own by dragging and dropping in elements of all kinds, like your logo, or even photos from a massive library, or even upload your own. You can also add videos for that extra oomph, and even add useful embeds like maps, or even a chart to show some fancy numbers. To publish, you can purchase a domain directly from inside Canva just by searching for what you want, or you can even get your own Canva domain for free. All you have to do is design once and have your Canva site look great on every device. And all this is included for all of Canva's users. We can't wait to share Canva sites with you, and we want you to pre-register to be one of the first to get access. So if you want to get your phones out, you can scan a QR code and pre-register, and you'll be one of the first people to get access to Canva sites in the coming weeks. And that's all I had to say. Over to Mel.
Thank you so much, Mamancha. I am extraordinarily excited for you all to be getting your hands on Canva sites. So we're going to go back to that QR code. Make sure you do take a shot, register, and you're going to be getting access. It's been phenomenal watching the team work on this very, very challenging problem for the last year, but we're really excited to be getting it into all of your hands. So are you excited about it? Pop your answer in the chat. I'll look forward to reading them after. And it brings us to the fourth section of this Art of the Pitch session, where we are going to be hearing from investors themselves with our Q&A. So I'm very excited to see all of your burning questions being answered. And we have this very special interviewer for this segment, Jonathan Harley. Jonathan is on our team, and in a previous life, he was actually a foreign correspondent doing interviews all around the world So we're very excited to have him here today with us. So welcome, Jonathan, to the stage. Thank you, Jonathan.
Hello, Mel. Hello, everyone from the Canva Create newsroom. Great to be here today with everyone. You know, Mel, the Canva story, your story, really underlines just how important it is to tell stories in this visual economy. It doesn't matter what size your business is, and especially if you're a startup or you're a founder trying to either recruit the best people or attract investors. We're lucky enough today to be joined by two exceptional VCs, Rick Baker, who is the co-founder of Blackbird Ventures and an early investor in Canva, and Wesley Chan, who's the managing director of Felicis Ventures. He's led investments in 37 companies, including Canva. He was also a founder of Google Analytics. Thanks both to you, Rick and Wes, for joining us today.
Great,
Rick,
really happy to be here.
Let's start with you, Rick, with our first question and our first principles, which is, what is the most important thing for a great pitch?
Thanks, Jonathan. Great to be here today, and really great to reminisce a little bit on those early pitches, Mel. Loved it. So if I had to pick one thing for pitches, and there are many, but if I had to pick one, it would be product. I'm obsessed with products and with understanding your products. If I'm going to invest in something in the really early stages, and we invested when Canva was just an idea in Mel and Cliff and Cam's minds, then I want to really learn about the product and I want to understand the product. So for me, pitching is all about painting a picture of the product in the mind of your audience. And as I said, often that product at the time you're pitching it is just an idea, or it might be a really early version of the product. And what your job to do is to bring that to life in all its glory. And so I think one of the things I love is using visuals and pictures, component diagrams, workflow charts, bringing it all together, videos. We're seeing more and more videos in the pitches that we're getting nowadays. And using pictures, particularly when you're presenting live, instead of words, instead of bullet points, I think is for me really important. One of my bugbears I really don't like is when you get a live presentation and I see all the things that you're about to say on the screen, they're in front of me, I can read them in 2 seconds and it's done. There's no reason then to tell a story. But if you use visuals, you can use those visuals to help bring the story to life. And for me also to help me remember what I'm going to say and give me the confidence to make my pitch in a really good way and tell my story really well. And so for me, Canva changed the way I did my presentations. Now I go and search for these graphic elements and these photos that are relevant to what I'm trying to say, and I bring them in as the visual aids. So one example I was going to give of one of the best pitches we saw, apart from Canva, was a company called Zoox. And Zoox is a driverless taxi company. And when Tim, the founder, pitched this, it was just an idea in his head. And driverless cars were this crazy idea, this impossible thing. And this picture was one of the pictures he used to show us what was in his mind. And it really brings to life this beautiful idea in vivid colors. And it's really emotive and really suggestive of what he wanted to do. And then what he did was talk about the customer experience. And using this picture again, he described what it'd be like when this car pulled up and what it would be like to get in and interact with the vehicle. And it was such a great pitch. We ended up leading the seed round, and Zoox cars are now driving around without drivers around the streets of San Francisco. It's all about the product.
Wes, if Rick's one-word mantra is product, what's your North Star for founders preparing a pitch?
Yeah, it's very simple. It's clarity. I think clarity of thought is the single thing that I look for that, is the big difference between whether we say yes to the pitch and do the investment, or we say it's not right now, you have to do a little bit more reflection on it. I mean, if you look at Mel's pitch that she sort of went through, it's so clear, right? Here's the problem. Here's 100 different products we have to use to make a great design or to make a yearbook or to make a website. And we can boil it down to one product, which is Canva. And here's how we do it. It was simple. It's not lost on me that Mel's pitch on the Series A was 23 slides. I've seen a lot of founders come in and sort of do pitches that have 100 slides in them, or maybe even 150, right? Because they feel that in order to get their point across, they have to throw everything at the investor or at the person they're pitching to. Let me show you how much command I have all the details. And it's the exact opposite that actually makes a great pitch, which is how can I curate and how do I prioritize the most important thing for me to get across rather than put the 100 things I have to get across. I was going through the pitch deck for Google Analytics when it was an idea before we created it at Google, and the slide deck was 14 slides about why it was needed and what was different from everything else. So clarity of thought and being able to curate and to prioritize and show off the most important details. That's the thing that made Canva stood apart. And I think for those wanting to make a great pitch, that's going to make their thing stand apart as well, as by curating and only prioritizing the most important things.
Our next question is about that really tough time when you're trying to get out of the gates, you're trying to get to first base, which is how do you go from starting out to securing your first investor? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I would say that it's getting somebody to be your advocate, another founder or previous investor or an investor, and saying, can you do me a favor? Let me sell you on why this is important. If that resonates with you, can you go around and make sure that you can whisper to people and introduce me to the right people who understand what's happening? If you look at, even Mel's journey, like one of her folks that introduced her to everybody in the Valley and sort of whispered was Bill Ty, right? Like, she got him excited and said, it's time for us to go around and make sure that we can meet other investors. And, he helped out with that. So getting that advocate is, one of those secrets about how some of the best founders, the most successful founders are able to secure their first or their 50th investor. It's having somebody who believes equally in your mission go out for you and say, this person's amazing.
Mel, at that stage, was investment the first thing you asked for, or was it something else?
Yeah, so I guess we had our first company for 5 years before we actually landed investment. And I'm really grateful we did that because it was the same concept as Canva, but on a much smaller scale, like in Australia for yearbooks very specifically. And I feel like that bootstrap journey was very, very valuable because it meant we learned how to spend money really wisely. It meant we learned how to create a great culture on a budget. And it also meant that we really got very clear on our strategy and what we were wanting to do. But then when we wanted to turn our eye to Canva and to take it to the much bigger stage, what we found was rather than asking investors for investment, we actually would ask them for advice. And this was really valuable for us because it meant that we got to build up those relationships. They couldn't say no to us as easily. And it also meant that they could see us execute time and time again on our strategy and vision. And so when they gave us advice and then we took it on board, we would then go and refine things over and over again. And I think that's how we built a lot of our early investors. Certainly Rick was one of them. And then Wes came in when we were very, very early on. And we had a little more refinement in our pitch deck. And so we could hopefully show him what we were made of.
Well, our next question is about getting to that right place to pitch. Specifically, how do you know when you are ready to pitch? How do you know that you're actually in that position? Is it about rehearsal? Is it about getting in the right place? Wes, I might start with you because you've obviously, like Rick, you've heard a lot of these, haven't you?
Yeah. Look, a pitch is not a practice, right? It's an audition. And when you do an audition, the most important thing is you nail it, right? And so you got to do something, you got to practice, you got to rehearse, you got to get in front of your friends, your family, other founders, and just nail it as quickly, practice as much as you can so that when you get in front of an investor, or another founder, somebody that you want to do business with or work with, you completely nail it. Mel's storytelling is one of the most, you can sort of see from some of the examples that she's been able to sort of tell on this conference. Her storytelling is, amazing, but she's rehearsed it. And the amount of work that goes into how she rehearses, how she tells the story about the voice inflections, all that is not lost on, a sophisticated investor who sits there and goes, wow, you really cared enough to rehearse this. This isn't the first time you're coming in front, or you're not using me as practice. So it's one of those things where always think about it as an audition. You only get one chance on an audition. And, while there's, all these things where you can sort of say, hey, I want advice and whatnot, like, the first impression is the most important.
And a related question to you, Rick, is our fourth question, which is how much should you adjust your pitch? How do you adjust your pitch to your audience? Is it a case of one size fits all, or how do you wiggle it so that it's pitching to the right audience?
I think it's so important to learn as much as you can about your audience and really tailor your pitch to them. And that might be, knowing whether they're experts in this industry or not, and making sure that you hit the right level. On one hand, there's nothing more annoying than when you're an expert in a field, someone telling you the basics of it and assuming that you know nothing. But on the other hand, your pitch doesn't work if you're pitching to someone who doesn't know anything about an industry and you don't start from the beginning. So get that right, know that. And then I think keep refining your pitch. And, Mel, I know you have a lot of thoughts about this, but the idea of getting better and better every time you pitch and stopping and thinking about, what did I do well in that pitch? What didn't work? When people resonate at certain points, you kind of grab those points and amplify them, and the ones that went a little bit flat.
Mel, you've been doing this for a while now. Do you keep refining your pitches, your stories?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, we continuously, like every single time we do a pitch, we are like, we can add this new thing in, or we didn't, this didn't quite land, or we've got a better way of expressing something. It's definitely a continuously ever evolving process. I don't think we'll ever be done with our pitch. And if we are, it would mean that Canva's not going to be a very exciting place in years to come. So I very much expect that we're going to continue to refine our pitch deck forevermore.
Well, one final very quick one from you, Rick and Wes, which is, let's go full circle. What was it about the Canva pitch in those early days that made you want to invest? And Wesley, I know you're very strong on the idea of ordering ideas and prioritizing.
I mean, it was Mel's incredible vision, right? A lot of pitches say we're going to make something 10% better or 15% better, or maybe even 100% better. And Mel basically said, or less than 1% of the world, everybody in the world using Canva is still, I still remember, when she said, boy, we're 0.2% of the way there. And when you hear somebody say, well, I've only, done enough to hit 0.2% of the world, and there's another century that it might take, but I'm going to make this happen where 100% of the world is on Canva, and they need it, and they're going to be able to design beautiful things very fast and share them with lots of people. You just kind of want to do nothing but say, sign me on. I'm a believer. So I would say that clarity of vision and that grand mission made it very easy to say yes.
And Rick, for you?
Yeah, I think, again, I come back to this idea of product and insights, and echoing what Wes said, Mel, your insights at that very early stage were just wonderful. And the insights about how this could change the world of graphic design, how it could democratize graphic design. It was in the early days, everything seems to be democratized nowadays, but that was this really interesting use of a word. And so it all came together really nicely. And what a journey it's been.
And it's only just begun. Rick and Wes, thanks for your time and your insights today. Super, super helpful. Really appreciate it. Back to you, Mel.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, Rick, and Wes. It was great to have you here today. So just while we move on to the next section, I would love you to pop in the chat. What was your favorite pitch deck tip today? Or do you have another that we missed? And we'll have a read through them, and maybe we'll even circulate them in a blog post. If you've got any ideas, add them in afterwards, or right now, in fact, add it in as we move on to the next section, which is lessons learned building Canva. We have learned a lot over the years. Here are my two very wonderful co-founders, Cliff and Cameron, who you'll be hearing from both of them in just a minute. Cliff has been with me on this journey right from the start. You might recognize that very first photo back in my mom's living room. We were there in the very early days getting things off the ground. So it's been about 10 years in the making to get to this point today. And so he is going to be talking about solidifying company values and culture. And then I'll dive into building a mission and goals driven company. So over to you, Cliff.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first virtual conference. Very excited to be here. Today, I'm going to be talking about creating and solidifying company values and culture. And so when we first started Canva, we wanted to have one idea and keep that idea front and center of our minds. And that was that we wanted to build a place that we wanted to come and work every day. But what does that mean? When we were small, we could chat to anyone and everyone would know what we valued as a company because we were so small. But as we got bigger, it became more and more important to solidify our values because it was harder to communicate them one-to-one. Thousands of decisions being made every day, and we wanted the latest person in our team to understand what we all knew and all deeply valued through investing all that time together. And so we asked our team, we firstly asked them, what do you love and appreciate about our team and culture? And then we asked them, what do you want to preserve as we grow? And we got so many phenomenal responses around many different themes. Some were things like respect for each other's skills. Some wanted to learn from lots of talented other people. And some people said they loved to see us dreaming big and wanted to continue to see us as dreaming as big as we did back then as we scale to now. But we wanted these values to be applicable and important, not just for our team, but for our product and for the broader Canva community. And so our 6 values were not so much born, but they were solidified. And those values are: be a force for good, be a good human, make complex things simple, pursue excellence, set crazy big goals and make them happen. As you can see, some of the themes directly translated, and then empower others. And this is very much at the core and essence of what we do. Because without values, the rest of our work doesn't really matter. If you're shipping a great piece of product or making a sale or whatever, but you're not doing that whilst being a good human, the output of your work doesn't matter. So we see values as the base layer of everything you do and how you show up to work every day. And so it's how these values show up in our everyday decisions and everyday actions that really matter. And here are some examples that I'll go into in a second, but by solidifying our values, our team knows we'll have their back when they choose to live them. So it's been incredible seeing our team bring these values to life in so many different ways. And it can be from the day-to-day, such as helping someone with a project. It can be from giving kudos on our Slack channels, just empowering someone and telling them they did a great job. It can be from checking in with people who are remote or people that you haven't heard it from in a while. And it can also be just something just as simple as inviting a newbie for a coffee date. So it could be things that make people feel more included. And here are some of these initiatives we have at Canva, such as investing in the diversity and inclusivity of our team. Could be things such as investing in the diversity of our content library through our Diverse Creator Fund that's just in its infancy. Could also be through things like giving back to the community, and especially through the pandemic, this has been increasingly important to Canva. And some examples are, we set up some food pantries all through the Philippines where local Filipinos could access these pantries in times of need when they just needed the basic foods to sort of keep their families going. Can be what we've done through our Canva Vibe team, who have cooked over 50,000 meals for people who really need it through the pandemic. Or it could be environmental. It could be setting the huge goals around net zero, which is a bit more than what the current politicians are doing over in Europe, and being climate positive by 2023, which is the goal we've set for ourselves. So our values also show up at a company level. We've always had a simple 2-step plan from the very beginning. The first is create one of the most valuable companies in the world. The second is do the most good we can do. And we really believe step 1 fuels step 2, but not just that, step 2 also fuels step 1. And so as we have grown, step 2 has become more important than ever. And step 2 is do the most good we possibly can. So we've made a few steps towards this in a few different ways recently. So the first is our 1% pledge, which we committed to a few years ago. That pledges 1% of the company's equity, 1% of the company's profits, 1% of the company time, and 1% of the product doing good in the world. And Mel and I have also recently announced that we're putting the vast majority of our shares, which is 30% of Canva, towards doing the most good we can do through the Canva Foundation. And what that means is that all that community love, all that community goodness that is contributed to Canva then gets mapped back in that 30% to making the world a better place. So every time you're using Canva, every time you're paying a subscription, you can feel confident that it's making the world a better place in a small way, but together in a big way. Because we honestly believe that there is enough money and goodwill in the world to solve most of the world's biggest problems. And one goal we feel really deeply moved by is the goal to end extreme poverty. Because 711 million people currently live in extreme poverty on less than $1.90 a day. So what does this mean in tangible terms? Extreme poverty means things like not being able to do your work because you need to spend the entire day collecting water. It means making really, really tough decisions, such as choosing between feeding your children or taking your partner to hospital. Or it can mean something as simple as having to sell all your shoes to fix a broken roof because you need a roof over your head. So extreme poverty is more than a statistic. It's a real life thing that 700 million people live with on a daily basis. But many studies have shown one of the most effective ways to help someone with no money, believe it or not, is to give them money. So that really feeds into the first project that we're doing, because what money enables people to do is simple things like buy what they need, have a consistent and predictable source of income so they can make long-term plans, and then do things like invest in their family, their children, their nutrition, and the long-term success of everyone around them. So we're very excited to announce our first pilot with Give Directly, an organisation that specialises in giving money directly to the world's poorest people. And we're kicking this off with a $10 million pilot to the world's most vulnerable people in Southern Africa. But this is just going to be the start of a much bigger and longer journey where we rapidly plan to expand this pilot and really work towards the goal of ending extreme poverty. Coming full circle back, how can you build a values-driven culture in your company and workspace? Today I've gone a lot about what's important to Canva, but how can you bring this in to not just your company, but your family, your friends, whatever you do, maybe even your life? First thing to mention is it's never too early to think about the value your company or family or the individual values you want to embody and write them down. Anyone can write down values on the wall. However, we believe, and one of the best pieces of advice we've ever received is a true value is only as good as the money you're prepared to put behind it. So if you're prepared to lose money because of a value you've committed or put money behind something, that's really, really important, because sometimes living your values is about making sacrifices. So I'm going to go into a few tips for creating your own values for your startup, company, nonprofit, or even your family. And there's 7 of these tips, right? So the first is it's important to capture what your team already loves. You can ask your team simple questions like, what traits do you value in your teammates? What do you want to maintain in your culture as you grow? And this is all in the Brainstorm book, link there, bit.ly Canva Create 21, or use the QR code. And as I mentioned, you'll have access to brainstorming Canva templates that you can run as a team, which include these things. Number 2 is get a small group of people, founders, key leaders, people who are cultural beacons across your company or team, to help review everyone's answers and put forward suggestions. The third is wordsmith the values. So at Canva, we had so many ideas. We had to really tease out what they were, aggregate lots of them, and then wordsmith the essence of what they were trying to communicate until they are crisp, succinct, and are snappy, because you want them to be memorable and shareable. Then number 4 is invite your team to give examples of how people might live those values within your team. It might help for you to select which ones are most helpful and relevant too. And then the 5th point is ensure your leadership team truly buys into the values and that they live them. And then you need to find ways to embed them in your company's daily lives. So we give awards, values awards, being a good human. There's an award for pursuing excellence. And we really celebrate people who are living those values in the day-to-day comings and goings at Canva. And then number 7, which is arguably the most important point, is you need to actually live them, as values are only as good as what you put into practice and you demonstrate. And really values and embodying those values comes from the top, but it can come from anywhere in the company. So be a good ambassador of your values, whether that's within your family, your social group, or your place of work. So to recap, rapid fire. Capture what your team already loves, review everyone's suggestions together, keep the values succinct and memorable, share how your team live the values, ensure leadership buys into the values, embed them into your everyday life, and make sure you put them into practice. So that's me. Back to Mel.
Thank you. Solidifying company values and culture is extraordinarily important and has been really, really critical to the scale of Canva as we have been growing. So next, I'm going to be talking about building a mission and goals driven company, which has also been an essential ingredient of Canva's growth so far. This is a quote that I love. Friends congratulate me after a quarterly earnings announcement and say, "Good job, great quarter." And I'll say, "Thank you, but that quarter was baked 3 years ago. I'm working on a quarter that will happen in 2021 right now." So this was a quote from Jeff Bezos in 2017. And so a question that I'd like to throw to all of you is, where do you live? Do you feel like you spend most of your time thinking about the past, the present, 1 year in the future, 5 years in the future, or 10 years in the future? So I've been doing a lot more meditation lately, and I do find living in the present is really, really important to get grounded. But when you're planning, it's actually really important to be thinking a little bit more about the future. There's always a lot of noise, and it's often really hard to not be thinking about that noise and getting dragged back into the present, as it often takes priority. There's lots of great answers coming through that chat. It's very important to very intentionally take a moment to dream about the future that you want to create. Why is it important to dream about the future, you may ask? Well, if you don't dream about the future, you can't make it happen. It sounds obvious, but it's really, really true. Why? Because knowing about where you are headed can help you get there a lot faster. Why? Because it helps with investor alignment as new investors buy into the vision. So when we present the vision deck of what the future of Canva is going to look like, and then we go and execute towards that for the next 8 years, then they kind of understand because they actually bought into that vision. Why? Because it helps with investor relations as they see steps towards the vision as you're executing. It helps with our team to see where we are headed and helps us to get there faster because everyone's rowing in the same direction. And very importantly, you can only grow as big as your dreams. So if you're not dreaming, you can't possibly get there. So we often say we are a mission and goals driven company at Canva, and that is extraordinarily true. A mission is where we want to go in the long run. Determining your crazy big aspirational mission is extraordinarily important. Where would you like to go to in the future? It should be so critical that you'd be happy to invest resources into it. If you made huge strides towards it, but never in fact reached it to its perfect extent, it would still be a worthwhile mission. And goals are an important step towards our mission. So mission, where we want to go in the long run, and goals, an important step towards our mission. I'll give you a few examples of this in practice in a minute. So the magic is truly right between setting an amazing mission and actually pulling it down into tangible steps, which are the goals along the journey. Because what you don't want is a small mission. You get to the top of the ladder and you're like, what's next? I don't know. You also don't want to have a mission without goals because you're dreaming really big and then you're not taking any tangible steps. And so you're never going to get there either. What you do want to do is have mission and goals where you have a mission, there's a crazy big goal that you'd like to get to one day, and then breaking it down into tangible steps. Goals have been part of our DNA for many years. In fact, it's in one of our values. So Cliff mentioned set crazy big goals and make them happen, which is an extraordinarily important one of our goals. We've stuck goals on the wall over the years. This was a few years ago and we had sell our first vector image. We've obviously got many, many more in the library and had many people purchasing vector images in Canva Pro that includes them as all part of the package. We've painted them on walls, we've painted them on canvases, we've done all sorts of magical things with goals because we believe they are really, really important. And very importantly, we've also celebrated when we've achieved these goals. Goals focus and align teams. So why is it so important to set goals? It gives clear objectives for everyone to work towards. It provides focus amongst the noise of all the day-to-day tasks. It helps each team to feel recognition from the whole company. So when we stick them up on the walls or we talk about them and then the team actually achieves them, then the whole team understands and appreciates their incredible efforts, even if it's from a completely unrelated field. And it also helps everyone to celebrate wins along the way. And this is something that is really important at Canva. We have these crazy big goals that are hugely aspirational, that's going to take many years to achieve. And so it's really important. We're not just focused on that huge mission, but we actually take a moment to bask in the accomplishments as we hit the goals along the way too. So what makes a good goal? A good goal is a critical step towards our long-term mission. It will occur in a moment in time so you can actually celebrate it. It's short, succinct, and memorable, and where possible, it delivers value directly to our community. So here is an example. So one of our mission pillars at Canva is to empower the world to design in every language. Obviously, it's a very big, large aspirational goal. So back to the wall example I shared earlier, a number of years ago, we set this first big goal worthy of celebration to launch in Spanish. And when we reached that amazing goal, we had a little celebration and we had a little La Tomatina festival. They wanted to be coated in tomatoes. It was a lot of fun. And so that first goal was launching in Spanish, which was the first goal towards the mission of empowering the world to design in every language. We then set the goal of launching in 20 languages and we achieved it. We then set the goal of launching in 100 languages and we achieved that. We then set the goal of launching in hard languages like Chinese and right to left, including things like Arabic and Hebrew and Urdu, which were the harder languages. Then we really wanted to be diving into the localized experience. And now we've been really focused on becoming truly local. So you can see how we're continuously taking off goals that move us towards our mission of empowering the world to design in every language. And now we're in 100 languages, used in 190 countries, and we are used all across the globe, which is extraordinarily exciting to see. And in fact, non-English markets now account for more than 50% of Canva's community, which is a huge accomplishment, really thanks to all of the steps that we've been taking for many years towards that same mission, all of those progressive goals that we've been continuously unlocking year after year. I personally believe a long-term mission and goals have been very underrated in the business world and very certainly underrated in the startup world. It's often more about A/B testing and rapid iterations. And I think that that is great, but it's really important to have your long-term mission and goals that are underlying that as well, because making sure that you're executing towards that is really, really important. So mission, where we want to go in the long run, goals, an important step towards that mission. When planning for the future, there's two different ways that you can do it. You can plan with what you have right now, which might not be very much, or you can plan by thinking about the dream scenario of where you'd like to be in 10 years' time. And I'll give you a little example of this. So let's say you're building a castle just in your brain. There's two different ways that you could do it. You can look at the sand and you can look at the bricks that you have, and there's not very much going on there. And you can be like, oh, well, I can't build a very exciting castle. You can just stack a couple bricks there. Or you can envisage the most amazing castle that you'd like to build in the years to come. And then you can go and collect the ingredients. You can find the amazing people that need to help build it. And then probably you're going to have a much more exciting castle in 10 years' time. Dreaming together about the future with your team is extraordinarily important. And so in your workbook, we have some questions. These are my favorite questions that I do with teams all the time. What would wild success look like in 5 years? And it's in a little brainstorm format, so you can all just jump in and you can simultaneously collaborate on it, which is really cool and fun. And then also the inverse of that question, what would terrible failure look like in 5 years' time? And so that is also a really important way to start to think about what is that ideal future that you would like to all be working towards. Sometimes it's hard to get out of the weeds. And so going macro can really help. You might ask another question, what will your industry look like in 10 years' time? And sometimes for more established companies, you need to get back to what makes them special. And I've done this workshop with a couple of companies over the years, and it's been a lot of fun. And sometimes this question is extremely telling and helpful. What have you been most proud of about your company to date? Because often what you've been most proud of is exactly what you should probably be doing more of in the future as well. And it can kind of help people to get back to fundamentals. So all of those questions are in the workbook. Check it out if you haven't done so already. It's also really important to celebrate what you want your team to replicate. So if you want your team to celebrate reaching amazing goals, you probably should have some amazing goals, stick them on the wall, put them on a Canva page, wherever you need to put them. It's very important to celebrate what you want your team to replicate, because you're probably going to do a lot more of that over the years to come. And then we have lots of quirky celebrations to actually celebrate launching these goals. So we've released doves, which was a lot of fun. We have painted a wall full of languages when we hit 100 languages. We have broken Greek plates. We have had a remote pottery class in the COVID world. I guess why I care so much about this is that I really believe, I truly, truly believe that businesses are so much more than profit. Businesses should be champions for change in the world. Businesses do, in fact, deeply affect the lives of their team and customers. And so it's incredibly important that businesses are thinking about the long-term ramifications of the products that they create and put out in the world. Businesses, in fact, create the world that we live in. So we certainly want businesses to be thinking very carefully about what it is that they're creating. Really want to live in a world where companies deeply think about the world their products are creating. And so really getting a clear picture of that mission that they're striving towards, and then continuously take steps towards that direction and work really hard to turn it into reality. So quick recap of the key lessons. As Cliff described, it's very important to deeply embed values in the company culture. And it's really important to have a clear mission and set of goals to get there. That is it from me today. Thank you so much for joining, and back to Clayton and Julie. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Mel. That was absolutely fantastic. Shout out to you as well, Cliff, and to our friendly investors, Rick and Wesley, for joining as well. We're now going to go pass over to Cameron, who will be taking us through building a strong brand and then using that to achieve your goals. So over to you, Cam.
Thank you, Clay, and always great to hear from Mel and Cliff. They always have very wise words on the journey that we've been through so far here at Canva. So hello and welcome. I'm Cameron Adams. I'm one of the co-founders and Chief Product Officer here at Canva. I'll be talking today about why building a strong brand is so important and how it can contribute to you achieving your own crazy big goals, as Mel and Cliff just mentioned. Very first up, I'd like to remind you that we have created a fun little workbook that accompanies today's session. So if you'd like to practice what you've learned today or just take some notes, log into Canva, then type this link that's on the screen into your web browser. Okay, so on today's agenda, I'm going to be covering off the key steps to building a strong brand, setting up for success with Canva as your partner, achieving your goals, and last but not least, we'll wrap it up with a bit of a Q&A session. Hopefully we'll have time for that at the end, and we'll be taking some audience questions there that Clay will help moderate. But before we get into all this, there's an even more important question we need to answer. And that is, why do you even need a brand? Well, we're all trying to achieve a goal, big or small. And as most of you are here to learn about startups, often that involves building a product and a business. If you're trying to set up your business to have an impact, being crystal clear about its messaging and how it connects to your customers is vitally important to its success. Utilizing a brand to consistently tell that story over time is one of the best ways that you can do that. A brand allows you to build a relationship with your audience who, if you play your cards right, will turn into customers. And it conveys what's special about you and why you are different to your competitors. It's okay if you don't get your brand exactly right straight out of the gate. Take a leaf from our book. But being clear about what you're conveying and doing it consistently is important, even if you end up in a totally different spot. When Canva started out, it wasn't even called Canva. It actually came from a company called Fusion Books, one that was focused entirely on school yearbooks. The evolution from yearbooks to designing anything was mirrored in the change in our brand, from Fusion Books to Canva Chef. The less said about that one, the better, to just Canva. And thankfully, the change to the name Canva also coincided with the evolution of our big vision that really captured the minds of investors and our early team. This has enabled us to build a strong foundation for the Canva brand over the last 10 years. As with most organizations, what our brand is has grown over the years. We started with a name and a logo that appeared on a simple waiting list webpage. But as we've released our product and started to interact with our customers, our brand has become the way we respond on social media, the tone of voice we have on our landing pages, the way we edit our videos on our Instagram page, the graphics that we use in our emails, the style of our onboarding tooltips. It's even begun to escape our product and marketing and influence things like our company values, which you probably just saw. This in turn influences the types of people that want to come work at Canva, which feeds back into how our product and our messaging interact with our customers. It's one big virtuous cycle. But let's rewind for a little bit. I would love to know what organizations spring to mind when you think of the most iconic brands in the world. Type your most memorable brands in the Zoom chat and we'll see what the most standout ones are. We got Disney, Google, Coke, lots of Cokes, McDonald's, Apple, plenty of Googles, Nike, Google, YouTube, and Versace, Amazon, Coca-Cola again, Jollibee. Well, that is certainly a very varied list. But even though each of the brands that named in there were very different, they all have one thing in common, and that is an extremely strong promise to their customers. Each of the brands has built up their equity over many years, and they've done so consistently by providing a promise to their customers. Who those customers are and what they are promising is unique to each brand. That promise is the key thing that a brand represents, and it's a shortcut to letting people know they're in for something good. If you want to be consistent in delivering your brand promise, you have to always know what you're here to do and what promise you're making to your customers. So establishing your brand stance and purpose is really important in the early stages of your organization. Let's look at Nike. What is their promise? According to their website, it's to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. There actually is a little asterisk next to the word athlete. And the asterisk in the brand promise says that if you have a body, you're an athlete. What about Netflix? Netflix's corporate mission is to entertain the world. Patagonia's new mission statement is, we're in business to save our home planet. Their old one, it was actually build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, use business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. Their new one is a lot shorter and says everything the old one did, it's just a lot snappier. Knowing that a brand's promise is one of the most important parts in building a strong brand, what are the ingredients to build that promise? I like to think of them as the 3 Ps: purpose, personality, and people. So the first P, purpose, when understanding the promise that you want to make to your customers, you should have a strong understanding of your purpose. It's sometimes called your organization's mission, and it's why you're here, what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to get done. It is the North Star which guides everything you do. Here at Canva, we are working to empower the world to design. So everything that we do needs to contribute to that somehow. It has driven our product development since the very beginning, but as we've thought more deeply about our brand over the years, it has also dictated the approach we've taken in building that brand promise with our customers. Looking at your purpose and breaking it out into ways in which you can express your brand can be really helpful. Our purpose breaks out into 3 pillars of our brand. The first of those is empowering. We strongly believe that by democratizing design, it gives people a voice that they haven't been able to speak with before. It is incredibly empowering to build your first business, help your team find a new path forward, or help the most vulnerable people in your community. So highlighting the ways in which Canva empowers people to do just that is very important to us. You can see this through the photographs that we use of real customers, visualizing their ideas using Canva, and the stories that we tell on our website, our videos, and even in our TV commercials. The world. Canva isn't just a tool for people in the United States or Australia. It's truly empowering the world. From Brazil to Indonesia, Russia, and Nigeria. We make sure that our brand encompasses all of these places and offers content to people from every country. Expressing our brand in multiple languages and cultures is part of our promise. The third pillar that we have is to design. Design, of course, is at the heart of Canva. So we make sure that every piece of content we put on Instagram, in ads, emails, on our homepage is impeccably designed and shows off the power and beauty of great design. This inspires people to create great content and helps them see what their visual communications could look like with Canva. The second P of personality is what people often think about when they think of a brand. If purpose is what you want to communicate through your brand, then personality is how you do it. Personality can include your visual identity, such as your logos, fonts, and colors, but it also includes things like sounds, jingles, your tone of voice, the words you communicate, and how your team interacts with your customers. Depending upon your purpose and your audience, personality allows you to target the right people and create something unique, which will be heard through all the noise. Your personality has to resonate with the people you want to talk to. Otherwise, they'll prefer to go talk to someone else. We had lots of discussions in the early days about what personality Canva's brand would have. And we settled on something that was approachable, fun, but helpful and inspiring, like a good friend that you would ask for advice. Are your audience looking for someone that they can trust? Are they looking for someone that will push them to achieve new goals? Someone to wind down with? The answers to these questions will influence the shape of your logo, the color of your presentations, the words in your tagline, so many different touch points of your brand. So it's important that you understand your audience. But possibly the most important part of your brand's promise is the third P, and that is people. The people in your organization are the ones that bring your brand to life. They are the ones that make decisions about your business, talk to people on the street, and type the words that will be read by millions. It's not just your brand team, but everyone, from marketing through to engineers and recruitment, that will create your brand. So your brand is only as strong as the team behind it. It's important that you constantly communicate to your team about what your brand means so that they can reflect this to your customers. As I've said all along, a strong brand requires consistent messaging, and your team can only be consistent if they're all aligned to the same message. We have found it extremely valuable to keep our team focused on the same things by using our cultural values to create consistent behavior internally. As you saw from Mel and Cliff, we have 6 values, including be a force for good and set crazy big goals, as well as 4 others. And I can do an entire other session on the role that culture and values have in shaping a company. But Cliff's given you a little bit of insight into it. Suffice it to say for now that as your organization grows, you should think more deeply about your values as they'll play an important part in your success. So now that you know the foundations of a strong brand, it's time to set your brand up for success. One of the key pillars to building a strong brand is your visual identity. In the past, this was really hard. Tools were fragmented, costly, and specialized. It was a nightmare to get anything done, and you usually needed to call in a squad of branding specialists to have any chance of seeming professional. But that was before Canva. One of our cultural values is make complex things simple, and that's exactly what we did with the process of creation. Instead of costly tools, hunting all over the internet for content and spending countless hours going back and forth with teammates and printers, we put design, editing, collaborating, publishing, and even printing all on the one platform. Everything you need for any team to conquer visual communication. Expressing your brand is right at the heart of that visual communication. So we put it front and center in Canva and made sure you have the tools to not only come up with a brilliant brand, but express it consistently in all your content throughout your entire team. To start off, your brand kit is your brand's personal hub in Canva. It contains your brand logos, fonts, and colors, and makes it super easy to access them while you're designing. So there's no more excuses for not using just the right shade of purple. All of your team can access these basic elements of your visual identities. They're available when they need them, and they act as an aid to keep them consistent when designing. The second part of building your brand with Canva is templates. We like to say that templates are all about starting inspired. Having a great branded template ready to go gets rid of the scary blank white page and fast tracks your content creation. Plus, when you create something you really love, you can share it with your team as a template, ensuring everyone in your team can start inspired and be consistent when it comes to fonts, colors, and layouts. Even Angelina from accounting will be able to produce something on brand with your templates. In combination with templates, you also need to inject some creative freedom into your brand that will help bring it to life and adapt to all the different types of messages that you'll need to send to your customers. So having access to unlimited content empowers your team to find assets for all the different bits of visual communication they'll create without ever having to leave Canva. And when they combine that with on-brand templates, it turns any team into an efficient content powerhouse. That means you can get back to doing what you do best. The last part of Canva that I'll mention when building your brand is the ability to bring your team in to collaborate live on any presentation, document, or social post. You can even bring them together to create a full-length video. Having your entire team collaborating in the one place streamlines communication and makes sure that they're all on the same page, something that's vital when you're all trying to communicate the same story. If you're a startup, having this speed and efficiency while retaining a high-quality brand is so important, as it lets you rapidly move from idea to execution for your next product launch or your next pitch deck, regardless of where your team is located or who's involved. They're my top tips for using Canva to amplify your brand, but I'd like to zoom out a bit for the last section of this session. At the very start of this session, I talked about achieving goals and how building your brand is an important part of telling the story to the people that will help you achieve your goals. If you're just kicking off your startup, there's so many things that you need to do, it can be overwhelming. Building a product, gathering a team, finding funding, getting desk space, the list is endless. It's really important to have some clear goals that can keep you focused and you can rally your team around to make sure that they're all heading in the right direction. You can almost think of it as the brand for the brand. Goals have been massively important to Canva. Another of our values is setting crazy big goals and making them happen. And they're important because they help you keep your head up, looking towards the horizon, but also provide the structure you need to place one foot in front of the other. We already did a bit of work with your mission or your purpose when talking about your brand. And goals take your mission and break it down into slightly more bite-sized chunks that you can start tackling. They take your vision and start turning it into reality. We've created a bit of structure for your goal setting in our workbook. And if you take a look right after the brand sections, you'll see a page with 4 columns that help you lay out a plan for achieving your goals. In column 1, you should put some of your big goals. They need to be pretty audacious and make you stretch a bit. There's no point in having a goal that you know you're definitely going to hit because those won't be worth achieving. If you were telling someone else about these goals, they need to get pretty excited about them and they'll want to help you figure out how you might achieve them. A good example of a goal that could fit in here is build the tool that enables people to design on their laptop, or create a content library with millions of photos. A great way to test if your goal is big enough is that it should put a bit of squirminess into the pit of your stomach, but you should have a couple of ideas of how you might actually get started on them. And that's where the next column comes in. Milestones. Milestones help you set the pace for your goals. They're the big rocks that will add up to you achieving your goal and starting to plan out the next 6 to 12 months. If your goal was to build out a huge content library, some of your milestones might be sign up 20 photographers, import your first batch of photographs, or build a database that holds different media. It's not rocket science to go through this process, but just the steps of sitting down and putting in a bit of thought as to what you actually need to do to achieve your goals can be hugely valuable. Getting it out of your head certainly helps you convince other people that they're worthwhile things to do. And building up that momentum with your team is crucial to getting any idea off the ground. The third column that we have in the workbook is your measures of success. It can often be hard to show that you're making progress or focusing on the right things to make progress. Having a metric that you can measure lets you see your progress over time and determine how far away or close you are to the finish line. For our content library goal, some metrics that might be useful to measure are the number of photographers that you've signed up, or maybe the number of gigabytes that you've imported. We've found that these numbers are great to have on a big dashboard that your whole team can see so that they know what they're working towards and all the work they've achieved so far. We actually used to have a big animated chart showing every time someone signed up or created a new design in Canva. It was great to see that pulse of activity flowing throughout the office at all times. The final column that we have in the workbook is perhaps the most important. What are you doing next week to achieve your goals? No matter how far away the finish line is, if you never start, then you'll never finish. Thinking about the steps you can take every week towards your goals and milestones is important for keeping yourself accountable. They can be the tiniest steps, but as long as you're taking action towards your goals, then it's all positive progress. Next week's steps might be reaching out to your first photographer, or researching different types of databases, or even taking your own photographs that you can then process into your library. You can always think of something that will get you closer towards those crazy big goals and doesn't rely on someone else helping you out. Hopefully, once you've filled in that small page of your notebook with the 4 columns there, it should give you the clear steps you need to actioning your crazy big goal. There's still a lot of work ahead, but if you're ever wondering how you're going to do it, then a structure like this will help you refocus and reassess what it is that you're doing. And it's a tool that we've used time and time again to think about our crazy big goals and to actually making them happen. The world is not short of ways that you can improve it. And we need people like you on this call who are on a mission and coming up with those crazy big goals that are going to make it better for us. If you pair your big vision with some crystal clear goals and a well thought out brand, then you've got the foundations for an inspiring organization that can rally not only an amazing team, but bring customers flocking to your side. So as a reminder of today, when you're establishing your brand, think of the 3 big Ps. Know your purpose and the promise that you are making to your customers. Define the personality of your brand and craft it to attract the audience that you're after. And finally, care about your people and empower them to be the ambassadors for your brand. I hope that I've managed to make you think a bit more deeply today about how important it is to plan your brand, and also how important it is to use goals as a way of setting the cadence for your progress. That's all I'd like to pass on to you today, but I think we've got a bit of time to answer some questions.
Speaking of Q&A, we've got a ton of questions for you from our crowd. So I will kick it off to Clay.
How long was the planning and production before Canva was officially launched?
How long was the planning and production? Well, I think Mel gave you a bit of insight into the pre-planning and production. It had been bouncing around in her head for a while, but once we got together and actually started working on what the product was going to be and what we're going to launch, it took about a year. It started off pretty loose. We drew countless mock-ups of what Canva could look like, thought about all the different features we wanted to include in it before we even committed a line of code. So once we'd done a bunch of sketching, we then started coding up some prototypes and seeing whether they'd actually work on a computer and a mobile phone. And that allowed us to start then building the team that we needed, the really technical engineering team that we needed to push it out. Once we had an engineering team on board, it took us about 9 months to actually bring the Canva product together into something that we were happy with. Our investors kept telling us to launch, launch, launch. We kept saying, hold on, hold on, hold on. And yeah, about a year after we started, we actually launched the product to real people on August 26, 2013.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, looking toward the future, we do have a question from Juliet. What is the future of Canva, specifically within the next 5 years?
Oh, specifically within the next 5 years, that's easy. I always like to think of the future of Canva on 2 different axes. One is like the types of people that use Canva, and the other axis is the way that they use Canva. So in terms of like the types of people that use Canva, we've got over 65 million people who use Canva every month now, which seems like a massive amount. But when you think of all the people in the world that could possibly use Canva, there's approximately 8 billion of them. So 65 million is a small drop in the ocean. And we're constantly looking for different ways that different people can use Canva, because obviously not everyone in the world can use Canva for something right now. So constantly growing it and finding new audiences and figuring out new ways that different people in different walks of life can use Canva. That involves going global. So we're in over 190 different countries, and that's been a huge focus of ours to make sure that not only people in English-speaking countries, but people all over the world who don't speak English, speak different languages, have different cultures, work within different social structures, can use Canva for what they need it for. So we're constantly building that out, and we actually have a huge team of people that focus purely on international markets. Then in the other kind of axis, which is the more kind of product-related axis, what types of things can you create in Canva? We're constantly exploring new and different ways. Over the past year, we've launched new ways of doing presentations, ways that you can deliver talking presentations, ways that you can communicate through video in all sorts of different ways. And that's really helped people through the pandemic and working remotely and dealing with all the stuff that you need to deal with now that no one's actually in an office. And over the next 5 years, we really want to double down on that. We've seen Canva being used more and more increasingly as a productivity tool and as something that you use in business and big organizations. And we're keen to really dive into that, particularly when thinking about interactive design and design that's not purely just static. So you got a bit of a hint of it previously when Mamancha revealed Canva Sites that we just launched. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when we're thinking about interactive design, design that you can create that other people can interact with, you can get responses from, you can gather data with. It's a really big world, and we're really keen to dive into that.
Yeah, that interactivity is going to be huge, and Canva Sites is super exciting. I can't wait to start using it. We have another question here from Anna. When you created Canva, did you foresee or anticipating it being leveraged at an enterprise level?
I think we've always had a really big vision, and we think design can be used across pretty much everything. So I think very distantly, we kind of thought, yeah, it'd be nice if Canva was used in big companies. But it's not something we specifically focused on from day one. We kind of scaled it down a little bit and thought about who are the people who can immediately get value out of Canva. At the time, visual social media, images, Instagram, Pinterest was just growing and coming into its own. So we found a really ready user base who were keen to use Canva to communicate through that medium. Over the years, we've grown and grown, and with it, our ambition has grown. Enterprise has become a big thing for us in the last couple of years. We actually launched Canva Enterprise at the end of 2019, so roughly 2 years ago. And we've seen huge growth there in the number of people using Canva with their team, collaborating with lots of different people, and using it all over the company. So not just in the marketing department, but sales teams, internal communications teams, teams that just need to communicate with one another, whether that's like product development, engineering teams, whatever. They're all starting to use Canva to communicate, I think, in a much better way. And that has kind of fueled our growth in enterprise of late.
Cian wants to know, has your vision for Canva changed over time?
Oh, I'd probably say it has not changed over time. We had a pretty big vision, empowering the world to design, and it gives us so much coverage. Our ambition has changed over time. At the very start, we were just happy to launch a product and get it in the hands of people. That it started growing and people really loved it, and word of mouth started spreading was a fantastic bonus. And the growth over the years has made us realize truly what palette we have to play with. We've gradually come to realize that all our hopes and dreams that we had in the very early days, we can actually accomplish. And those have set the tone for some of the goals that we've set in later years that we probably didn't think we could do 9 years ago. And now, with the huge team and the amazing product that we've built, we can actually achieve them now. I'd hedge my bets and say the vision hasn't changed, but it's changed slightly.
That's good. We're on the straight and narrow. Thank you so much, Cam. Such a valuable session just now, and we really appreciate you answering all those questions. We've really enjoyed chatting to you.
No worries. There were some interesting questions. So thank you all out there in the Zoomverse.
So thank you to all of our presenters today. Thank you to all of you for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure being one of your MCs. I'm Clayton Criven.
And I'm Julie Floater. Happy creating.